Today I'm talking to Joff. Joff is a registered nurse who was overweight, suffering anxiety, heart palpitations, and many other conditions until he found the carnivore diet. And today we're going to talk to him about his experience. Just before we get into it, do me a massive favor, smash like, and also please subscribe. This really helps out the channel, and it helps me to be another voice out there talking about the carnivore diet. Let's meet Joff. How did you find the carnivore diet?
So I found the carnivore diet through, a little bit of my own research. But before the carnivore diet, I was actually already in the low carb ketogenic space. And really, it sort of just flowed from there. Once I started low carb and got into, watching YouTube videos and learning more about the low carb space, a lot more of the carnivore influences popped up on the feed. The likes of Dr. Ken Berry, Sean Baker, Dr. Paul Mason, and I was actually watching this YouTube channel, Low Carb Down Under, and Dr. Paul Mason came up a few times and talked about the carnivore diet. And so it really solidified it for me that maybe this is the way to go. But I didn't. I was hesitant at first to get into it until I probably watched. I watched this person that I'm sure a lot of people know, Professor Bart K, and his videos really stood out to me. And as abrasive and as harsh as he was in his content back then, it made perfect sense, and that's what really got me into um, deep diving into carnivore, and I just went all in. So that was about 3 months into my low carb ketogenic journey. I transitioned to carnivore. Yeah.
And what was it that led you to low carb keto in the first place, and then eventually onto carnivore? Was it
Right.
weight
Yeah.
related or?
Yes. So it actually, funny enough, it wasn't. Although, the weight loss was a huge part of what, the successes I've had on the diet. But I probably have to, give a bit of backstory about myself. I've always been a health conscious person, pretty much. So actually, I'll start with background of myself. I'm 32 years of age right now. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been working as a registered nurse for pretty much since it's been about 13 years now. Actually, I've been working as a registered nurse. So, and even before that, getting into my studies, into my bachelor's degree, I was a very health conscious person. And it all really started when um, I found out about my history of heart disease in the family. So it's pretty much, I was instilled in fear that one day I was going to end up with cardiovascular disease. And I guess that was one of the motivations as to why I wanted to work in healthcare, was to sort of combat and try to, personally for myself, to try and prevent myself from, getting cardiovascular disease. And a lot of people that I know in my family who have had cardiovascular disease, have suffered pretty severe consequences. I've had a few relatives that have died, a few relatives that have got complications and whatnot. So yeah, it was instilled in me that I've got to really watch out for this. So it wasn't until in my early 20s, I had my first ever blood test done, and the doctors had told me that I had high cholesterol, and you know, uh, back then, I knew that was I was told that was the one of the indicators or one of the things I needed to watch out for, and so I knew that because of my studies, and the doctor basically gave me an ultimatum. Um, the first thing he recommended was you can take a statin medication, a cholesterol lowering drug, um, or you could go and change your lifestyle. You can go on a low fat diet, um, go and exercise some more. The standard stuff, eat a balanced diet and whatnot. So I got the whole, spiel.
Whole grain and move more.
Yeah, whole grain, move more, eat less, live a happy life. And so, look, I chose the latter. I wasn't going to take these statin medications. And I was very surprised that the doctor actually started with, you've got to get on a tablet. But I guess, I had disclosed of my family history. And he said, oh, no, oh, can't, you have to, do something about it. So, anyways, I did that, and I got myself a gym membership. I started to exercise more. I followed the a dietitian's advice on eating healthy, low fat, um, high protein, I guess, and I basically fell in love with this, this health buzz that was going around as well, which was the gym. And I've really got into it, really got involved to a point where, a few years down the track, I started to get into really serious, I guess, training regimes. Like I got into powerlifting. So I was powerlifting for a couple of years. Got into competitive level. I wasn't super good, but I competed at local level, and and I was making all sorts of progress in terms of my physique, in terms of strength, how I felt. I was following the doctor's advice. I was following the dietitian's advice. I felt invincible. Um, However, besides all of the positivity that I was relating to good health, I was experiencing subtle little things, including, minor heart palpitations at that time, minor little episodes of, I guess you would say, shortness of breath, um, and yeah, just little things, and of course, that put those episodes put the fear in me, and I would panic a little bit. But at the same time, I had correlated this healthy gym lifestyle, low fat, mixed balanced eating diet to having good health. So, well, this must be, I guess, part of the motions, and I'm following advice. There's nothing I'm not doing wrong here. So, um, yeah, it sort of from there, a few years down the track, it just spiraled down. I was nearing into my 30s, and I was having these episodes a lot more frequently. And it got to a point where, firstly, uh, I was putting on weight on a steady incline pretty much since I went on that diet, since I went to the gym, which again I attributed to I'm putting muscle on. But now I look back at photos, I don't think that was the case. I was definitely on the more pudgy side of things, and yeah, so I was putting on weight increasingly. Episodes of palpitations got worse and got more severe, and until I reached the point where, close to my 30s, uh, life changed for me. You know, I was recently married. I, had a my firstborn child, and a lot more stresses in my life started to pop up. Now I ballooned in weight at this stage, and pretty much the episodes got to a point where they were quite severe, um, chest pains and palpitations, where I was going to hospital basically once a week, and it was pretty hard time for me. It was, you know, I couldn't piece it together what was going on, like what went wrong, what the hell went wrong with me over those the last few years that I put on weight and that I was getting all these episodes. And then I I guess it hit even a more downward spiral when I started to correlate that maybe this is a genetic thing. This is more of a familial thing, and that my relatives experienced the same thing. I was just meeting. I'm just going to meet them at the same end. That I'm just going to get this cardiovascular disease no matter what. And so that really took a toll on me mentally. And as a young fella at the age of 30 with a kid, at the same time, I was determined to beat this thing. Like I wanted to be there as a father to my son, to be there and support my family. And so I tried my hardest. And so, I got into researching, looking up certain, methods or reasons why this is happening. And so that's where, the low carb diet came into play. I actually heard of low carb from a work colleague of mine who had told me about the low carb space and had said something that I thought was a bit crazy, was that sugar causes inflammation. And I thought, that, at the time, I didn't piece it together. I thought this is crazy talk. But, well, okay, let's look into it a bit more. And yeah, and it turns out, yeah, there was this channel called Low Carb Down Under, and I thought, started learning more about the low carb space, and I thought maybe this might be the answer. Okay, and so sorry, I should also say at this time it was during a period when the world went crazy. We had lockdowns. I'm sure people can piece together where what time period this was, but yeah, I immediately. Well, actually, I didn't go into it straight away. My trigger point of actually starting the low carb diet was one morning, or yeah, one day. I was sleeping, and my wife woke me up, and she told me that that you stop breathing for about 2 minutes, and I'm like, no. I'm like, I didn't. So I recorded myself, and I'm like, right, I didn't breathe for 2 minutes. And so, you know, um, me being as a nurse, I pieced it together. I think I've got sleep apnea, and this is something new. It's something that's just come up, and I don't know why that was the trigger for me, but I just thought in my mind, if I can't breathe while I'm sleeping, I've got to do something about it straight away. I've got to fix this straight away. And so I took the leap of faith and I said, no, no carbs. That's it. I stopped eating carbs, and I stopped eating at first. I cut off sugars and then slowly weaned off until I got to, yeah, a point where I was basically eating a carnivore diet. It was an 80% carnivore diet. I think there wasn't apart from the vegetables, I was already eating a high fat, high protein, meat heavy diet. And so that transition going into low carb to carnivore was pretty much um it was smooth sailing. It wasn't too difficult for me. Apart from the first month or so of going carnivore, the minute I stopped eating veggies from my diet, um, I broke out in a severe rash all around my body, and I had these white powdery stuff that would just come out of my skin and as I was scratching, and so I don't know what it is that I can definitively say what that was. Although if I piece two and two things together, I was eating a lot of high oxalate foods whilst I was on the low carb journey, or even before that. And I all of a sudden just abruptly stopped all that. So I was drinking these things called the turmeric lattes and eating a sort of a Mediterranean diet with, spinach and a lot of herbs and spices. And And I've stopped all that, and the day I went carnivore, and that's a week later, the rash broke out, the white powdery stuff, and then I thought and I think now it could have been oxalate dumping, but who knows? I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose anything. I think it was. And so yeah, that's how I come across the low carb diet. And it's been nearly well, it's been over 2 years now since I've done low carb, and I'm hitting the nearly the 2 year mark since going carnivore. So
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
that yeah, 2 years.
Wow. Okay, well, happy upcoming anniversary. Wow.
Yeah,
Um, Before I want to kind of go into a little bit of detail
yeah,
regarding
yeah.
your job and stuff like that, but just before we do, as someone who's almost been on the diet 2 years, what is your daily routines like as far as eating?
Eating. All right. So my daily routine with eating starts with uh one meal a day, and that
Uh,
that yeah, I eat a one meal a day, which is usually around midday, or dinner, depending on how I feel. You know what? I'm quite flexible with it. Um, although I admit on the occasion I will have that if I'm a little bit hungry, I'll pick at some you know something small, maybe a boiled egg or two, um, whenever I feel like it. But for the most part, the big, my one meal a day is, pretty much sustains me for the rest of my day. And so that's allowed for a lot of flexibility around what I do. As you can imagine, as a nurse, I'd be doing, so in context, I work as a shift worker. Um, I do all sorts of shifts. And so that has freed up a lot of time for me, being flexible and eating that way.
mm.
So yeah, an OMAD. And in terms of fluid intake, I don't. I have recently just stopped drinking coffee, probably over a month ago now. So
Interesting. And
um,
and how's that working
mm,
out? How are you feeling?
well, the first thing that I probably noticed was I no longer have the cravings for coffee, which I thought, you know, this is it's going to be impossible for me to get rid of, being a shift worker who depended on coffee for life on the shift work. um I walk past the coffee shop, or I smell coffee, and I don't want a bar of it. I don't want it. That's the first thing
Wow.
I noticed. The second thing is, um so I mentioned as well, you know I was having cardiac symptoms. It did improve massively on the carnivore diet. One of the things that didn't improve was the sort of rapid heart rate. So I would still be sitting around the 90s to 100s, just because I was drinking about 4 to 5 cups of coffee a day. That was my norm for me at the time. And they weren't just, cupfuls, they were, teasp like 3, 4 teaspoons of coffee and in a mug. So I had a pretty big caffeine intake. So, yeah, but heart rate right now has dropped probably around the 60s. And oh my gosh, the sleep. Um, I was already doing a biohack for sleeping. I was already wearing the blue light blockers, and that's helped me immensely. But without having the caffeine at night, oh, I sleep like a baby. And yeah, that's all the positives I've gotten from the coffee, from cutting out the coffee. So now I can probably say I'm close to 100% carnivore. Um, I can't really think of any other foods that I would be eating. No, I would probably even say 100% carnivore now. Yeah.
Nice. So, how does that work out with relationships, like when you're eating with family or if your friends invite you out somewhere or whatever?
Look, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that to me, I don't know about you, Dave, but that was probably one of the biggest barriers from me going onto the diet, just the social aspect of things.
Mm.
For one, as a nurse, We are completely spoilt by families, patients with, you know, chocolates, cakes. We're spoiled by the system, who provides us with these foods on a daily basis. And so, being in your lunchtime with, or your break time with your colleagues, and them seeing you just in the corner not eating anything, it was really weird at first. And so that was one constraint for me. The other constraint was, so my background, I'm Asian by background, and so in my culture we have, high amounts of carbohydrates in our diet, and rice is a big staple. So the minute I'm at a party and I'm not eating rice, I feel automatically judged. I feel like I am. You'll know this, Dave, obviously being in Japan, and so rice is a huge thing in the Asian culture. The first time I kind of went public about being carnivore and not eating rice, I remember I was at this party, and then one of my uncles was like, "You're not Asian anymore. You don't eat rice." And I thought, "Oh gosh, oh no, this is what I have to deal with." Um, yeah, and so a whole bunch of other social barriers that I've come across, but that's probably the cultural aspect is probably one that really affected me the most. But um, it didn't it didn't deter me from pushing through with it, because, well, at the same time, while I was, I guess, uh talking to these people, a lot of these people were like, "Wow, you're losing a lot of weight." And just so everyone knows, in total, I lost about 40 kilos, close to 90 pounds in around 6 months going carnivore. So that's when I started going carnivore. That's when the weight dropped. Just pretty much, I was losing weight every week, and yeah, it was insane, because people were noticing that, and that really took away that um the barrier of being ashamed of not eating rice or eating certain foods in front of people. So long story short, I couldn't give a damn what people said.
Mm.
And
It's
so
it
yeah.
it's very interesting that you say that, because I think that's what happens. You get to this point where um you're you're realizing so many good things are happening for you, like the weight loss and feeling better generally and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then at that point, it's like, yeah, I just don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm over that. Over that, that feeling I've got, that little craving I've got in a social situation where if someone says, "Oh,
Yeah.
come on, just have one," I'm not going to give in anymore.
Right.
I'm not there anymore. Yeah.
Right. And I absolutely don't feel like the crazy person anymore. Honestly, when I'm out at social situations, in my mind, I think it's crazy that people are this is just the foods that people are eating, and at the amounts as well. Like, just for an example, if I'm out with friends, I just think it's wow, that's how normal people eat now. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. And so, just in context, let's say if I'm with friends, they're at a restaurant, they'll get, we're at, let's say, I'm gonna say in this context, a Japanese restaurant, where, we're eating, rice, vegetables, some, a little bit of meat, some soup, or it could be ramen noodles, whatnot. And then straight after that, we'd go for dessert. And I think, dessert? Didn't even think about dessert.
Hmm.
I just, that's the stuff that goes into my mind. I think, oh wow. I've sort of flipped the coin a little bit in my mind to think,
Hmm.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
insane now.
That's another good point. It's like, you think I'm crazy. You're the one drinking seed oils, it's
That's right. Yeah. We're pouring
yeah.
hundreds of grams of carbohydrates after, another meal of carbohydrates. So yeah, it's
Mm.
just crazy.
Regarding the cholesterol, have you had that checked recently?
You know what? I actually haven't. You know, the minute I watched a video by Dr. Paul Mason about cholesterol, um, I just thought, no, it doesn't make sense. And as a, as a nurse, obviously having a little bit of a background studying physiology, anatomy, and whatnot, it never made sense to me. Except I went along with it because, well, of course, cholesterol has to be the one that blocks your arteries. That's what we were being told, but it never clicked to me that why it never really made sense to me. I just followed the the narrative and yeah, but and so I don't feel compelled to do so. However, I am always being pressured by people. Maybe it's just the curiosity or their fear for me that I might have a heart attack. Um, and so I do once they just want to do it and put it out there in social media for people to see. But it's I haven't really checked my bloods and yeah.
Yeah. It's always been very this whole journey on carnivore has been very interesting for me in really
Yeah.
realizing how much um stuff like cholesterol and things like the idea of calories in, calories out and stuff, it's just
Yes.
been designed to get people to buy into quick and easy to understand slogans rather
Correct.
than teaching people and getting people to understand the nuance of how the body works. And I understand that that's hard to do, but it's worked in the favor of food companies and pharmaceutical companies to
Right.
have this easy kind of, oh, cholesterol, high cholesterol's bad kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did being a registered nurse impact you as far as, making you kind of go, no, this just can't be right, or, the maybe the pressure you would get at work from different people saying, why are you doing this? What are you trying to kill yourself?
Yes. So that's a hard one to uncouple. I have to be careful with what I say because I still work as a nurse in a you know uh in my profession. So, but uh you know it has been if anything, this has probably been the hardest challenge for me is the power of knowledge and completely changing the way I think about things. Um, you know, ever since starting that journey, going low carb, keto, carnivore, I've learned so much more than I have during my 3 years in my nursing study when it came to human diet and nutrition, and even a bit of physiology, pathophysiology, cardiovascular health, and whatnot. And so, having my whole perspective change, you know, of course, I was happy for my personal in my personal life of all the improvements I was making, but in terms of the um, things that I guess I would do in my day to day job, it made it very difficult because let's face it, the carnivore diet contradicts all public health knowledge on diet and nutrition, and so um, makes it very hard. Especially, I'm in my perspective as a healthcare worker, I see people who don't want to come into the healthcare service first and foremost, but are there because of the consequences of chronic disease epidemics, um, or you know, all your metabolic diseases that we know now is caused by inflammation. And seeing people day in, day out suffering, and it's hard because it makes me think, well, I wonder what would happen if these people were on a carnivore diet to begin with. I wonder if uh if people were aware of the knowledge that I know, would they be in the same predicament as they are in now? And so, you know, just for people to know, I see people who are diabetics, people who've had strokes, cardiovascular disease, and some of these people, you know, don't expect it at all, and they come into hospital, um, you know, without given the choice, and that the end game for them basically is that they can't go home. A lot of them can't go home. um and it's not just the elderly, it's a lot of younger people. And again, just from my uh I guess my observations is that a lot of younger people are having these diseases, are getting these diseases. A lot of younger people are having strokes, a lot of people are having younger people are having heart attacks, diabetes. I mean, I'm seeing them at you know with teenagers. And not just you know being controlled by diet or oral medications. I'm seeing young people with diabetes who are on insulin, and type 2 diabetes, not type 1. All right. Obesity, I'm seeing that at such a rapid rate. Pretty much, I could pretty much say 80% of, well, I would probably even say higher, 90% of a place that I've worked in would have at least, yeah, 90% of them will be, I would consider either obese or underweight, or just,
Wow.
suffering from malnutrition. That's just the reality of what I see every day. And so, yeah, um, it's not just, people that, have had this disease for a long time. These are, some people, haven't had, I guess, some people have just had strokes out of the blue, and not have had a pretty extensive background or history. um and yeah, so I guess the more and more things I piece together, and I think, gosh, man, I wonder if diet really and nutrition had something to do with this. And you know it at times it would make me feel quite down about it. I'm one of those people who, you know in my line of work, uh you can either just get on and do your job and just continue with the pressures of you know the demands of the healthcare system, or you can be passionate about what you do and actually want to improve people's lives. And that's what kept me motivated, as a nurse, and still does to this day. And um you know it's very hard. It got very it was very hard at one point, that I had to watch these people and think, man, well, I had someone, let's say, tell me, why is this happening to me? Why do I have diabetes? And I'll be like, I wish I could tell you. um and I wish you knew that you don't need to eat carbs in your diet. um but unfortunately, it is what it is. So as an outlet for me, I guess, I can't, for myself, I can't change the healthcare system. And I don't think a single person can. And I'm not trying to. I don't want to do that. I think people have to come to the conclusion to themselves that they have to work on their own. They have to find it out for themselves the hard way, I guess. And so, an outlet for me to try and I guess bring motivation into um in myself is to reach out to people outside of work, and to do it through social media. And so that's what got me into being active in social media, and started promoting and talking about things like the carnivore diet, low carb, keto, whatnot, and sort of just promoting it out there. Okay. And so that alleviated a lot of dissatisfaction I was having in myself. And so I, yeah, I really got into it. And so I started off with Instagram, and I did have a YouTube channel as well, earlier, where I threw on some, videos on the carnivore diet, because I was excited about all the things I was progressing with. But then I, stopped that for a bit. And so, yeah, I got into Instagram, and then I thought, well, this is great. I'm getting a lot of interactions from people in the carnivore community. And then so I thought, I'll go and restart my YouTube channel again. So I did. And so that's where I find my, I guess, my solace and safe space, where I'm able to actually talk about the carnivore diet without having to contradict a lot of what is going, was being told out there in the masses, by the masses. So yeah, and so that's how I've navigated around that issue.
And I'll link to your social accounts below this video. But
Yes,
just want to go back to something like, if you had that patient in the hospital and they were saying,
yes,
"What's wrong with me? What can I do?" Is it kind of against the rules for you to say to them, "Look, why don't you try and cut out all the carbs?" I mean, I understand what you're saying, that probably they're not going to
yes,
listen to you anyway, but would it be against the
yes.
rules? Yeah.
I guess in not there are some. I'm obviously, as any healthcare worker, you've got to work again with your guidelines and whatnot. And so, um, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm cautious either way, because, um, well, for one, in my, I guess, my scope as a registered nurse, uh, we aren't supposed to be giving dietary advice or medical advice. Okay, we
Mm.
have our own scope to work with, and so there are other professions out there that do give those sorts of advices. Um, I guess starting the conversation about it isn't so harmful. So uh, for example, I'd have a diabetic patient, and I would say, have you thought about cutting carbs from your diet, or lowering the amount of carbs or sugars that you're eating? And so, yeah, that's how you could sort of work around it. But yeah, uh, that's pretty much it from my, I guess, from my scope. Um,
Mm.
and the but yeah, for the most part, a lot of people won't listen. Or in my experience, especially those people, especially diabetics, a lot of people will, who are type 2, for a long time, they say, well, I've managed this for 10, 12, 20 years, and nothing has gone wrong. Yet you're missing a leg, you're
Mm.
obese, you're in hospital, but you're managing fine. Okay, whatever.
Mm. You actually touched on a point related to that just before, which is, I think you said something like change won't happen quickly, or
No,
and
yeah,
well, like one person can't really change anything. It's like, and
no,
it's not just that. It's like, even if there was a government campaign actually actively promoting the reduction of carbohydrate and that kind of thing, it would still take generations before people adapt to that idea.
correct.
It's not going to happen quickly because we've got here over generations.
That's right. And even when they did bring out, um, or not, I guess, not promotions of the low carb diet, but when it did surface, um, it wasn't met with good reception, and I'm talking about the Atkins diet.
Mm. Yeah.
And most recently, Dr. Chafee in the 60 Minutes Australia interview,
Yeah.
that wasn't met with good reception either.
Mm.
So yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
So that 60 minutes thing, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, or 23 years ago, that's the kind of hit pieces that a current affair used to do about the Atkins diet. And that's why I ended up
Yes.
giving away the Atkins diet because there was just so much negativity around it and everyone telling me I was going to die. I was just like, no, okay, maybe I am going to die. I better give it up,
Yeah.
you know. And despite how much better I felt, it's just
Yes.
there's that much pressure to not do it that,
That's right. That's
And
right.
and for 60 minutes or a current affair or whoever it happens to be, I mean for them it's only about clicks, it's getting eyeballs. That's all it is. They don't care one way or the other.
That's right.
Um,
That's right.
you mentioned the shift work. Um,
Yes.
so you're doing shift work, you've got a YouTube channel, you've
Yes.
got a young family.
Yes.
um, and that kind of thing. So all that's able to be managed better now that you are doing carnivore. Are you able to kind of allocate your time better?
100%. And I'm not just talking about the flexibility of the diet, but ever since going on a diet, I've been able to manage life so much better. And it's not that, it's just one thing that I can pinpoint it to. It's multiple things. It's physiological, mentally, and psychologically, and even spiritually. I just feel more at one as a person. I'm able to actually deal with life. Whereas I felt like, you know, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I was a severely anxious person, and um, that played a big part in also just the way I would manage certain situations. I look now and look at my crazy schedule and how busy life has gotten, and think if I was still on eating the way I was going, eating a standard Western diet, could I have managed what I'm doing now? I don't think so. I mean, I was already struggling as a shift worker, with energy, and it was so difficult. Um, so yeah, I feel like I'm able to manage life in general much better. I should also just quickly point out the things that have improved since I've been on the
Mm,
carnivore diet. So the weight loss was one thing. So that 40-kilo weight loss, all the cardiac symptoms that I was having, I've alleviated them to a degree, or vastly actually. So for example, the severe palpitations I've no longer experienced since going carnivore. Um, the chest pains, I no longer get them anymore. Shortness of breath, uh, you know, nope. That's apart from when I exercise or go train at the gym. I don't experience that anymore. Blood pressure, we used to be sitting at around the 160s before carnivore. Now I'm at around 110 systolic.
mhm.
Um, the mental clarity, and I guess just being able to deal with life on a daily basis has improved. Um, I had a lot of skin issues prior to carnivore. I had a lot of um, eczema flare ups, and also I had a lot of gut issues as well in terms of just uh, just every meal I was eating, basically, I was just feeling sick before the carnivore diet. So um, yeah, and so now I don't have any of that. Uh, Seeing as we're in the whole gut space, I'll talk about that. Bowels, that is much improved. I mean, I used to be the type of person who'd be sitting in the toilet 4 or 5 times a day, and just sitting over the toilet and just, you know, constantly there. And now I'm quite regular once a day, nowhere near as much as I would be doing number twos when I was not on the carnivore diet.
That
And
fiber really had you wasting a lot of time, right?
definitely. So yeah, so with having all those things alleviated, yeah, it's freed up a lot of time that I and has made me, yep, deal with life a lot better. And
Nice.
I
So,
sorry, Dave.
I was just going to ask, no medications now as far as
No,
looking after blood pressure or anything like that.
no, definitely not. I actually was on medications for my blood pressure, and I was on medications for cholesterol. I caved in when I was
So
at my spiral.
you did actually start taking the statin.
I did, yes, for a few months. So when I was spiraling downhill, hospital every week or so, I caved, and I said, I'll take it, I'll do it, whatever will make me feel better. And I regretted it. I did feel the muscular aches that people were saying when you hop onto a statin drug. I felt all that. Um, I was actually on quite a high dose as well of the blood pressure lowering medication. I was on a what they call a beta blocker, and I was taking it twice a day. It's quite an amount actually, considering I was only a young fella.
Hmm.
Yeah, so no longer any of those medications.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so outside of your work, if a friend was asking you about it, and they were interested in getting started with low carb or with carnivore, how would you advise them?
The first thing is, well done. I would congratulate them for starting if they brought up the conversation. Firstly, I don't ever try to convince people to go on it, in terms of, I don't say, hey, you should go on a low carb diet. I think it's important for people to. I think the way I like to do it is to lead by example.
Mm.
And if people approach me about it and say, hey, look, you seem to be doing well on this low carb thing, and tell me more about it. The first thing I say is, well done for starting that conversation.
Mm.
And you know the the way I go about it is, I try to be as factual as possible, but also at the same time let them know that this is, what I know. This is my knowledge on things. I'm no expert, all right, but from what I know, sugar causes inflammation. Sugar raises your blood sugar levels. Okay, you don't need carbohydrates or any sugar in your diet because your body makes your own. Cholesterol is not is not causally related to heart disease. And so I think those statements are factual. You can't refute them. And so I kind of um, can take it two ways. Either people will just nod and agree and, oh yes, that's great. But some people get into, well, no, vegetables are good for you. They're full of vitamins. And so the way I always go about it is, I take the Socratic method and put it on them and go, well, what makes you think vegetables are good for you? What makes you think we need carbohydrates in our diet? And so, and I really like to get people thinking and stimulating their thought. All right. Um, just for an example, very recently, actually yesterday, I had actually gotten into a heated discussion um with someone. So I put out a video recently on my YouTube channel titled "Vegetables Are Bad for You," and so this person took offense to that, and
Uh-huh.
and basically didn't watch the video. But anyways, we went through the motions of it, and so I started throwing it back on them, and started did the whole Socratic method. Well, what makes you think vegetables are good for you? And at the end of it, it got, the conversation really got, it was escalated and heated. First, it got to the point where we were actually talking. It actually, I believe, it made sense to this person, and they started to piece things together. Although, you know, from there, whether or not people decide to act upon it or you know take it with a grain of salt, it's up to them. I'm not
Mm,
forcing anything to them. So
mm.
yeah,
Like they have to reach the idea on their own. No one
that's
is
right.
going to, it doesn't matter what you say, no one is going to change their mind. The only thing that
That's
can
right.
really change their mind is that constant messaging that they get throughout their entire lives. And,
Yes.
you or I are not going to be able to do that. We don't have the capacity to be able to
No.
do constant messaging. So, yeah.
No. But it is very important for people to for us, like for me and you, Dave, or anyone else in social media or um are talking about this or promoting
Mm,
this way of life. I think it's very important that we stimulate people thinking about it, and at least and if not promoting them to eat a certain way, definitely promote a way that people should be thinking about their own health rather than depending upon advice. Because let's face it, we've got we've got social media, we've got the internet in our generation, in our dev age. We're able to access information at snap of our hands. We just
mm,
need the right stimulus, the right uh the right sort of direction, and we're able to find information out for ourselves. And I think, you know, for content creators, I think that's very important.
mm,
That's a very important job for people to do. And you know, it's against my, I guess a philosophy or belief, whatever, that people should be forcing things onto others. I think
mm,
uh you know, the great thing about being human is autonomy and being able to do things and be able to, you know, do things with autonomy. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that I want to get into people's minds and promote, I guess, on my social media.
mm.
um yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I really think it's important for us to get the word out there. And like I guess the thing is, you if you've got a friend approaches you or they see, your results that you might have posted on your Facebook or your Instagram, and they're like, "Wow, that's awesome." They ask you questions about it, and then I've experienced this. Then they kind of back away slowly. It's like, what's this guy
Yes.
talking about? But the thing is, the next time they see another one of their friends saying a very similar
Yes.
thing, then that's when it starts going, hang on, there's something to this. This is not just that one crazy friend that I've got. This is now two people or three people or four people,
Yeah.
and it starts to build, and before long they have to try themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So, Joff, if people want to check out your YouTube or your Instagram, what are your handles? Where can they find you?
All right. So I go under the handle for both YouTube and Instagram, revitalize underscore yourself. Okay.
Is that
And that
revitalized with an S or a Z?
correct. The Australian way of spelling things
Okay. Okay.
with an S. Yes.
Okay. Revitalize underscore yourself.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the
Um,
same. Yep. That's for YouTube and on Instagram.
nice. So yeah, I'll definitely include links to those in the description. Thank you
Yes.
so much for spending time with us today, Joff. I really appreciate hearing your story, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dave. Honestly, thank you for the opportunity.
Guys, thanks for watching. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.